Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Lord Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts,
Archlector George.
And Harrison, the Adeptus Historical.
We continue our coverage of The Heroes, Joe's second standalone and the next First Law entry, and we cover End of the Road and By the Sword. So let's get started. As usual, we gotta thank you all for your support. Your support means so much to us. Thank you.
You ever notice that Joe uses the term "finished" lamely often?
Yeah.
That was what that was.
Oh, great. Thanks, Harrison, for boosting my confidence.
Jesus.
Appreciate
You're getting savage tonight, Harrison. What the hell?
it. Lord.
It's my Trump.
It's your Trump.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
We'll get into that later.
We just want to go ahead and remind you all to follow us on our social medias and our YouTubes. Bit of a new development is that I will be handling the editing for a certain video that has been promised to be released for about a year now. So,
It's only half a year, Jeff.
it's only half a year. Okay, sorry. So I'm gonna take that over in terms of editing, and it will be released. And then so enjoy that. That's George. That's your conversation, right? You had.
Sorry.
That's your conversation, right? That's the video about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's my conversation with Trey, who was one of our guest spots. I think it was last Christmas time, and he basically has this theory about how Baez is the true spoilers for Age of Madness. By the way, spoilers. Say that again. Baez is the true architect of the Great Change from a distance. And he's spent 3 hours talking about it. And Jeff, you're going to get to listen to that before anyone else.
Yay. Love it. I'm excited. Let's get to it. Yeah.
I think you'll be more objective than I am because I want to edit it in a way that makes us look like we're right. And I feel like if I edited it, that's what it would be.
You're trying to change the narrative instead of
this is
just
the facts.
look at you.
Exactly.
I'm old school. I'm 1950s detective in a TV show. Just the facts, ma'am. All right. We ain't doing the colorizing over here. So, just go ahead and please, continue to follow us and, leave comments. We like the comments. That's always so nice. What else? Oh, and so we'll just go right into our first segment, which is our community interaction segment, which is, Harrison, you want to take the lead on this?
I mean, honestly, a lot of the news and stuff that has been about the Devils, because the Devils is so close to coming out, and there's been a lot of hype for it. A lot of people are saying they love it a lot. So, I know we've already mentioned it, so there's nothing too crazy this week. I will make a note that next episode and the episode after that will be kind of weird. Community interaction segment may not be present because we're having to do some episodes back to back for some travel for a couple of us. But other than that, though, we wish you all the best.
Yeah. So, and you just continue to. Now, is the memeing every chapter thing still going on?
Yes, it's still going.
It's still going on. Okay, great.
Yeah, and I've seen some lots of people who've been contributing this week. So
perfect.
Yes. Well done.
Keep it up, everybody. Keep it up. So we'll go ahead and we'll start our first chapter read through. I'm just gonna say that this episode, it's tough for me. We'll get into why, but it should be pretty evident from my posting history on Reddit before I was banned, and as well as just my general how my commentary on the podcast. This one hurts. I'm not looking forward to this at all. Not in the least. Yeah. But we'll start off with our first chapter read through, which is End of the Road. And this one is, we start off, this is Crawl's perspective through and through, right? And he goes to visit Dow because it's the morning after the third day of battle. And, Dow's going to kill Calder in the circle. And Crawl is, I am not in any mood to just see this shit. And I'm done. And he already had told Dow that, I'll be your second for as long as the battle's on. But after that, I'm done, right? So, Shivers is standing guard, tells him he's in there. He goes in, and he walks in the middle of Ishri talking to Black Dow while Black Dow is sharpening his axe. and she isn't happy because she goes, why are you even gonna try to fight this guy? There's nothing I can do to protect you if you step into the circle. Which I guess I don't know if it's because it's so like everyone's eyes are on the circle, or maybe there's some kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Not religious power, but like some kind of power that just prevents her from affecting the result of a maybe
I
of a
think
of
I
a
think that
a
it's
circle is
her.
like something that's like by the traditions and rules of the North, right? So
Right, like, she can't interfere, she can't cheat in her mind also, because it's the culture, but I do think to a degree too, she's also saying, like, "I don't have the kind of abilities that would help an individual, so, like, that you doing that is just I can't help you out. I can only help out on the grand scale, or I can only help out." Now, she can't jump in there and chop Calder's head off. That would it would just wouldn't work that way,
mhm.
and she, also she's not even in their culture, so she cannot intervene herself, and she doesn't have. I mean, assuming this is kind of what she means too. She doesn't have the abilities like Baez has, where she could enhance him or something. Not that she would need to, but the point is there's just nothing really she can do whenever he goes into the circle.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's just an unknown. Up to this point, she's had all of the strategic stuff from Ishri and everything else that will help him, and that's pretty much the only reason why he's been able to do as well as he had. Let's face it, Black Dow isn't the best commander in the world.
Actually, he's a good commander, but he's not a
Well,
good. He's not like the best
He's
strategist. I know
not
what
the
you mean.
best, but none of the Northmen except Bethord really were, or Coldheart,
Yeah.
really.
Cool. Anyways, we'll get there.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, so Ishri isn't happy. She says that there are forces at work here that you don't understand. He's pretty understanding of the whole thing. He knows like, yeah, no, what you and your prophet are beefing with the first of the Magi, and you guys use men, nations, kingdoms to, basically conduct proxy wars. And yeah, I understand feuds. I get it.
I like that he says that too about it, because it shows that it's not just somebody like we saw in the last book. Rogant was aware of the situation in its entirety, in its actuality. It seems to be like higher up people seem to have kind of know what is going on because they are a part of the proxy war. But I like too that Dow, for everything he is, he's so many other things as well. So he's very clever,
Mhm.
and he's able to catch on to the fact that that's what's really going on, based off of like she's like, you just don't understand, and he's like, come on, you think I'm stupid? You're obviously from Gurkle. You're obviously here to help me fight the Union. You're not doing it for my sake. Like, I
Mhm.
know you're beefing with the first of the Magi from everything else I've heard and known, and I like that he just knows. Like, he's like, I know what you're talking about. Don't get all secretive with me. Like, what the fuck?
Ishri is like, she gets mad. She says like, "What is it with you pink men?" A call back to Pharaoh, and your damn pride. And he goes, "It's not about pride. If you think it's about that, then you don't know as much as you should about the North. It's about my name, and I can't get out of this any more than I can fly to the moon," which is true. Calder,
He
he
can't
made
back
the
down.
he can't. He
Yeah.
made the mistake of bringing Calder in front of everybody and proclaim, you're gonna die, and then
Mm-hmm.
he probably should have done that like in private, But it is what it is.
I mean, that definitely, it would have been much better if he had. But it's the North that you have to do everything. Everything's a spectacle.
Yeah. Also, too, blacked out. Like a lot of Ishri's kind of she does miss the point, but she is kind of basing her logic off of like so many of the other Northmen, which is based off of pride. Ironically, Black Dow is not a prideful man like at all. For the most part, he's a little prideful maybe in his fighting ability, but that's it. He's not in terms of his responsibility. He has an entirely different mindset. He's not prideful when it comes to his authority. He just it's all for show. It's all because he feels like he has to do it. And I think that that's a big note here for him. Like, if it was somebody like, the Bloody Nine, it would be for pride, but it's not for him.
And so she leaves. After he goes, "If I die, your wasted effort will be my greatest regret." Habiba, she goes, "Fuck this weather. I'm done. You know what? Fuck this. I'm out." She leaves, and then Krog, he says like maybe there's a point about the circle, that there's not anything to gain there, and that Bethard always used to say that there's nothing more that's shown more power than, and he was gonna say mercy. Dow interrupts him. He's like, fuck that. He said he's given he's given Calder all kinds of chances, and he's made me look like a prick and a half. And you know what? I guess, yeah, he probably has given him more chances than we kind of realized, right? And then,
Right, like we've only seen the past few days, and that's not including the previous 8 years since the end of the series.
right, exactly.
And
And
I like how Calder is always brought up as a threat in a way that Scale isn't. Even though Scale's the older son of Bethord and should technically inherit that line if that's the way they want to go. Like
right, but
Calder is
that's not
always seen
normally
as
how
a
they.
threat
Right.
because he's just he's too conniving and too clever for
No,
his own
very
good,
true.
some might say.
Yeah,
Also,
very.
Scales accepted the fact that his father lost position. Scales traditional when it comes to the North. If he thinks, like he's like, all right, Black Dow's in charge. That's is what it is. Whereas
Right.
Calder is obviously not okay with that.
They follow the name, the person. They don't follow the bloodline. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he talks about how he's got to kill Calder so bad, so gruesome, I guess, that no one will think to kind of like rise up against Dow. But he knows that he talks to Crawl like he's not gonna hold the shield for him. He's like, nope, he's here till the battle's done. And then he says to Crawl like the battle isn't ever done. You know that. And he goes in this part where he says that there are better men for the task, younger men, men with better knees, stronger arms, harder names. And so he just kind of starts talking. He goes, he's lost a lot of his friends the last few days. Weirin's dead, Brack's dead. And the times have changed. That men like Golden and Ironhead, they have no respect for him, and he doesn't really have respect for them either. And all of that, and he's struggling.
Excuse.
No, and then he just says, and
But
then Dow finishes for him. He says, "And you've had enough." And then Crawl nearly breaks down at this point.
I think my interpretation of this bit is kind of coloured by Stephen Pacey's performance because Croy is practically begging. He's
Yeah.
got that edge to his voice where he's just like, come on, come on, man, you just got to let me go, come on.
Mm-hmm.
I can just see Black Dow, almost in Stephen Pacey's voice. You're totally right, George. It's like Black Dow's just like looking at the ground, like waiting for him to finish, and he's like, obviously, he doesn't have any more words, so he's like, so you're done. Like he's very Black Dow's voice is very soft here, and I think that is very well done by Pacey.
I should listen to the Audible, the chapter. I should for this.
You should listen to the whole series.
Yeah, well, I like to read. Excuse me. So, and Dow, he understands, and he goes, we all have our limit, and a man of your experience shouldn't never be shamed, not ever. And that was nice of Dow.
That's very sweet. That's
It's
like
very
him
sweet.
saying it's like giving a respect to an old war veteran. He's just like, you've done your time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, Crawl asks him, he says, "Oh, I imagine you'll find someone else to do the job." And Dow says, "Yep, already did," and they're waiting outside. And Crawl's like, "Okay, good." So he thinks Shivers would be, a good man for this position. And then Dow gives him some money, I guess some coins, some gold coins for the, the work that he's done and everything.
A double guild. If anybody knows the price conversion for a guild over to the to a mark in the Union.
Actually, I think a guild actually might come from Norse culture specifically.
Yes,
it's called a were guild.
I think you're right. Yes,
it's usually not necessarily in coins, but stuff of value.
Okay,
So,
but he's giving him
rings, stuff that's been taken off the dead. They've collected all together and then they distributed it. So,
but it actually does make sense because they are making money. Like they do make. I mean, do you think it's actual like jewelry and things like that now, or do you think it's actually getting converted? They're using guild in terms of a actual sum now, and because they pay people with coins.
Yeah, I mean, a guilder is the name of a coin as well.
Interesting.
And we know Joe likes to do real life stuff.
Yes,
especially with names.
Yes. Anyways.
Then let me correct me if I'm wrong. Is this like money that he felt he owed Crawl for the work he's done? Because he says this will get you started out there. So is he giving him like a retirement package? Here you go, buddy.
I think in a way, yeah. Like,
well, I think this is
pension.
When he says double, I think he means double what they would have got paid for doing the battle anyway.
Right. Double
Ah,
guild,
So,
and
but
then
once
some, and then some.
exactly.
Yeah.
So once the battle's over, they go, okay, everybody gets the same
Mhm.
guild,
yes,
and then
yeah,
somebody get double, some people get triple, whatever.
Yeah.
no, that makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent.
And so, and Dow kind of, he asks him what he's gonna do. He tells him that he used to be a carpenter, 1,000 bloody years ago, and he might go back into it. Shape. He thinks like work some wood. You might shape a coffin or two, but you don't bury many friends in that trade. And Dow's like, yeah, I already buried all of mine except for the ones that I made my enemies, and maybe that's where every fighter's road leads to. And then, Cross says,
Jeffrey, are
yeah.
you feeling okay, Jeffrey? He mentioned shaping wood, and you had no comment on that. Are you sure you don't want to go back on
He
that?
didn't say shaping wood. He said work some wood and then shape a
Uh,
coffin.
I
Now,
mean,
the wood. Listen, the wood can always be worked, and it could be always
hey,
be
okay,
worked by anybody.
I just
And
got
if you
worried,
want,
Jeffrey.
we can work this wood if you like.
Just so long as it's not underneath.
No, don't you worry. There's a couple. It's gonna be a couple times that the brought to their knees. And so Cross says if you follow it far enough in relation to the what Dow said about every fighter's road leading to death, obviously. And he stood there for a little moment. There was no other comment, and he turns to go, and then Dow says out of nowhere, "It was pots for me." And then Crawl turns around like, "What?" And Dow is just standing there looking at his hand, and he says that he was an apprentice to a potter. 1,000 bloody years ago, using Craw's same verbiage. And he says that the wars came, and he took up a sword instead. And he always thought that he would go back to it, but then things just happened. And he says the clay used to make my hands so soft. And he goes and he says, "Imagine that." And then he just looks up and he genuinely smiles because it says he smiled. He doesn't do the wolf grin. He smiles, looks at Craw and says, "Good luck, Craw."
I
What
think
a
that
moment!
the way that Pacey does it as well too. And he says, "Imagine that." There's a chuckle in his voice, which is a
Oh
nice
yeah,
touch. Yeah,
yeah.
and
Oh.
whenever he says like, "Good luck, Craw," I feel like he's like in his mind, he's just like how Crawl was saying how he represents the old way, and that time is kind of over, and he's the last remnant of that, and he's ready to be done. Like Black Dow is kind of saying he's saying goodbye to the last memory of his friends in a way, because that's why he brought Craw on, is because he reminded of Three Trees, which reminded him
Right.
of those old times, and he shows this moment of vulnerability which he like has never done before, and it's very touching when it comes to a character like Black Dow.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure.
Sure,
Did
we'll
you want
get
to say?
into more of that later with the
Oh yeah, for
character.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. And then, oh God, and then Crawl leaves, and he takes a couple of seconds, and when he gets outside, he's like, "Oh Jesus Christ, thank God!" And then he sees Shivers. He clasps him on the shoulder. He's like, "All right, well, guess it's all up to you now, buddy." And then somebody else goes, "Is it?" And he turns around and he goes, "It's fucking wonderful." He's like, "Hey, so how's it going?" And yeah, all four of the dozen are doing just fine. They're alive. Uh, and he tells Wonderful, he goes, "Listen, I'm just letting you know now, I'm done. I'm quitting." She goes, "I know." He goes, "How? How do you know?" She goes, "How else will I be taking your place as Dow's second?" And then Crawl is like, he looks at Wonderful and he looks at Shivers and then he goes, "You?" To Wonderful. She goes, "Why not me?" And he kind of is like, "Well, I just figured you would go back to your family at some point." And then she says that the last time she went to the farm was 4 years ago, and they were gone, and no sign of where. And and Cross confused. He goes, "What? You just went back like a month ago." She goes, "Just walked a day, and then I just sat by the river and fished for a little bit, and then she came back, and that she just couldn't face telling him. She couldn't face the pity. But
It's
that
it's
this
so
is,
sad.
yeah, I know." And then she said that this is all that there is for people like them. And she goes, "You'll see." But then she, shakes his hand, says, "Been an honor fighting with you. Look after yourself." And she just goes through, to talk to Dow. And then Shivers, he takes the time. He goes and he goes, "Well, you reckon you know someone?" And then no one knows anyone, not really. And Carl's just like, fucking Christ, life's just filled with mysteries and surprises. And so then there's a bit of a break, and then he's now at a wagon that has Weirin's body, the Father of Swords. He's with Beck, Flood, Jolyon, and Scory. And Scory is just like, I can't believe you're actually going. He goes, yeah, I said it for all these years. He goes, yeah, exactly. You said it and you never left. And so I just never thought you would actually leave.
Everybody knows somebody like that as well that always says something they're going to do. Put it myself here.
I want to
Yeah.
release this episode.
Oh God, I swear I'll do it. I'll do it.
Lies. But you know, Jolyon, Flood, and Scory, they're sad to see him go. Even Beck, you know. And Jan's worried about who will tell his kids what he really was like if he dies. And Cross just like, just tell me yourself. Fuck. Christ.
Something you should have said a long time ago.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. And so a bit of a heartfelt goodbye, and then Jan and Scory have to go up to, hold shields for Dow. And, Flood says, so long, Chief. And Cross says, I'm no one's chief anymore. And he goes, you'll always be mine. And I'm like, aw, well, Flood, that's so nice of you.
That is
And then Beck is he's left behind. And he talks about, oh, I got to hold the shield. Have you ever held a shield before? He goes, more than once. Just hold the circle, stand by your chief, do the right thing like you did yesterday. And Beck goes, oh, fuck, yesterday. I didn't even tell you everything yesterday about what he was starting to tell him before. And he wanted, and it seems like he's about to start talking, and Craw kind of just like looking over, Weirin's body and everything, and he's, I don't really want to like hear anybody else's confessions anymore. I'm kind of just done with all this. But he does. He still gives Beck the space to speak, and Beck tells him about how it happened with Reft. Right? He tells him the truth, and he calls himself a coward, and all that stuff. And then he says, look, Crawl tells him, I know it bothers you, I know it burns at you, and it probably is always going to. But the fact of the matter is I've heard dozens of stories just like yours. It happens. It's the black business, he says. Bakers make bread, carpenters make houses, and we make dead men. So just try and do the best you can with what you're given, and you won't always do the right thing, but you can try. And just do that and stay alive. And then Becca's like, but I killed a man. Shouldn't I pay? Crawl goes, you killed a man. I mean, it's a battle. Everyone is killing men, Some live, some die, some pay, some don't. So if you've come through alive, just be thankful and just try to earn it. And this is where Beck goes like, I'm a fucking coward. And Crawl says, look, maybe, but look at Weirin. That's a hero. Now you tell me who's better off. So, and then Beck kind of like understands, and Crawl tells him in response to a question that he's taken the Father and Swords and burying it with Weirin because that's what he wanted to. And Crawl kind of says like every sword is a curse, and then he grabs the reins for the wagon, snaps them, the horses move, and he's going away from the road and away from the heroes. And that's the end of that chapter. Boys, how do you rate it?
How do you rate it, Jeff?
Yeah, Jeffrey. He's your
ooh.
boy.
He's my boy. I like Craw, but I love Dow. I'll give it an 8 out of 9 fingers.
Enough said.
Yeah, give it 8 out of 9 fingers. Just that introspective look at Dow. But I like it's just this. It's not like it came out of nowhere. We've been getting them this entire book, regarding Dow, right? When he talks to Craw, he pretends to chastise him, right, in the beginning for losing the heroes to Hardbread's men or whatever. But he's like, sorry about this, and then he, yeah. And then when he asked him to be his second, and he says it's because you remind me of Three Trees, all these other conversations that we get to peel back the layers of just Dow's character, and we saw in the first trilogy, but he was never really like a focal point. He was a big part, but he wasn't a focal point, And here he is a focal point because he's the protector of the North. Queen of the Royale and the Andals and everything. And
Queen of the Corinna. The Corinna bastards.
and just to see the humanization of Dao, right, as opposed to his black deeds in the past, and I just love this chapter, and you get to see Craw, just the weight of being a career soldier, just wearing him down to basically a nub of a man, and he just needs to leave, and he needs to leave ASAP, but he still is a chief by nature, right? He still wants to impart words to Jan and to Beck, and wishes the best for Wonderful, and he's just had enough, and it's under. I think anybody can understand the notion of just I've had enough of something. I'm done.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it an 8 as well. I really, really, really do like this. It's the classic war story, sort of bleak happiness, but not really. You know what I mean? It's very bittersweet. They get the guild, and Dow lets him go, and they have the chat. A very good character moment, but in the end, maybe the cost was too much, So, yeah, I do enjoy it.
Yeah, I really like how basically, like you said, the cost is too much. How like he's thinking if he had certain friends here, like all those friends who he thought were gonna be there to see him off, most of them are dead. That's not including all the other ones from before who died too.
I mean, he even says in one of the first chapters, doesn't he? He goes to say something to somebody and realize they've been in the ground for 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sad one. I was gonna say yeah. So I really like how Dao is portrayed. Like after all this, the first trilogy, we get this change in the first trilogy that he is. In his mind, he's trying to save the North from the tyranny of Logan, and he truly believes that. And then he takes up the moniker, not king, but protector of the North. And we see this, kind of like the one piece we're missing of Black Dow's character, which is just a little bit of background. We don't need something crazy, but to know what he was before, and to know that, like you can tell, it makes him sad that he didn't like. It makes him sad that he didn't get to live that life because he felt like he had a duty, and he's been stuck in that duty for such a long time now, and that's really tragic. And so I think 8 out of 9 just for the pure like blacked out character aspect of it. It didn't even take that much for you to be like, oh, twisting of the knife.
Right, you're right about that. Well, thank you for the scores, boys. This was a good one. We'll move on to our next segment, which is best meme of the week. Georgie boy, this is you. Take it away.
I'm sure Harrison will take over in a minute with his fantastic impressions, but for now we've got Crates of Bigfoots, who's had a couple of memes of the week at this point. It's doing well. They've got an up and rising star in House of the Meme Maker, which is becoming more and more active as they get close to the Devils, which is great.
Yes.
So this is the now infamous Trump and Zelensky meeting. And Zelensky is his West explaining to Beth that Bethod is baiting them into a trap, and Trump is Ladislas saying boldness is the best policy.
We don't like to talk about too much real world political stuff unless you're in our Discord, which we have a channel for that. If you want to join our Discord, you can email us. Otherwise, to take over here because George doesn't want to talk about it too much just because it's a mess. But I want to focus on the idea. The thing that makes it really funny for me is the idea of Ladislaw being Trump. So now I can't stop but thinking like, we need to push them back over the border. Those Northmen are terrible people. They're coming over here. They're raping our women. Like I just can't stop thinking. Captain Luthor, you're my man. I tell everybody I have 1,000 marks on you. I can't stop thinking about it. And I beg you listeners, put aside the political agenda. Put aside all that. I don't care if you like or dislike Trump. Think of Ladislaw as Trump in your mind, and you will never be not happy. There's every single line he says, almost every single one is so funny. Lord Smund, he's one of my best backers. And then later on, I said Lord Smund never knew what he was talking about. Lord Smund is gay. And I think it's really funny. Well done. Thank you, Crazy Bigfoot, for the not even just one meme, but 1,000 memes in my mind now.
And I have to congratulate you on an incredible Donald Trump impression. That was
That was really good.
Thanks, George. I've been working on it.
Gotta drive them back. Drive them back over the border. Back.
England needs a wall. The Northmen, Bathoth's going to pay for it. I've already had a meeting with them. He said, Ladislaw, you're a brave man. I'll build the wall.
Oh. This is going to make some great TV.
How would he say that in the first line? He would say, "This is gonna make her a great song."
I'll tell you, folks, the Northmen, they sing songs, and they have a wonderful song about me. Building a wall to keep England safe. This is how we're going to make the Union great again.
Oh, dear.
Oh. I didn't realize just how funny everything related to this meme is gonna be. When you first showed me this meme the other day, George, I fucking cried seeing it because Zelensky's face. I'm like, that I cannot.
That's West's face right there.
That's West. And then you see Trump. I'm like, oh my god.
Man, this is world history we're laughing about here. It's great. Fantastic.
It's totally great.
That was good. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a fantastic meme of the week. Who was that again?
That was a username on Reddit, Crates of Bigfoots, who might be meme of the year. That might be meme of the year.
That might be, yeah. Honestly, if we might have to hold another like contest down the line, and we might do like best meme of the calendar year. And man, I don't know.
That's a good plan. We should do that when it comes down to when we go over to Oklahoma, Jeffrey.
Oh shit!
Yes.
Yeah, shit. Well, then you got to collect all the memes, and because that's been your job.
Add it to your list of tasks.
The task to do.
Some things to procrastinate.
All right. Speaking of procrastinating, we can't put off this chapter anymore, as much as I want to. But we're going to move on to our second and final chapter read through for the episode. This is By the Sword. Not loving this one, folks. Well, I love it, but for all the wrong reasons. So we start off. This is Calder's perspective, essentially through and through, right? He is bound by the fire, waiting for Shivers to. Shivers is waiting with him, and just waiting for dawn so they could just get the whole circle, the duel going. And he goes, he tries to be funny, and he goes, I don't suppose you could see a way to untying my hands at least? And Shiver says, yeah, when the time comes, when you're supposed to have your hands unbounded. And then he goes, gee, things don't tend to work out the way we imagine, huh? And Shivers, he tapped, I guess, the ring that Monza gave him against his metal eye. He goes, not often.
Actually, I love, I think it's so cool that Joe's able to have a character like Shivers, and he does this with a lot of characters, where they have this moment where it's like a callback, but even if they didn't have the callback, it would still work. Like, he's not just doing an Easter egg, like, he's staying in the character's mind, and they would totally react that way. So even if he had thought of this character without any backstory, you read this completely out of context, you'd be like, oh, that's interesting. Obviously, that he's relating to his eye. Maybe Joe highlighted the ring, makes him do the ring. I just think it's so cool how he's able to implement these little unintentional Easter eggs. So I think he really would mention these details without having a previous history in the front of his mind.
It helps that he can do that because it's not overbearing. Like I've read so many books where it's like, and it would be like, and then Shivers tapped his ring that he got from Monza Macaron, and it just does the whole backstory in a paragraph.
I have to remind you.
That would be Brandon Sanderson. He would have done that.
Yes, that would be.
Opening the podcast.
Excuse me. I like the I like the books, like the guy, but he's the opposite of show don't tell.
Jeff's been building up for that for a while. He's been talking about his slight distaste for Brandon Sanderson off the podcast.
I finished the whole Cosmere stuff except the secret projects, but I'm gonna get into that. But like the stuff, it's a great story. But I'm just like, fucking Christ, if you have to say something for the 17th time, I swear to God. Anyway.
Shallan, stop telling us about your fucking problems. I don't care.
Kaladin, Shallan, I don't want to hear shit about you. I'm fucking done with y'all. I'm done. Fucking Christ. I'm not going to say anything too spoilery, but I'm glad. You know what?
Anyway.
Yeah, not going to get into any spoilers with that, but whatever. We're going to stop talking about that. Anyway, so moving back to Calder's conversation with Shivers, Calder just needs to speak. It's that nervous, like, blathering, prior to a very nerve-wracking event. He asks, like, who's holding shields for him? Shivers tells him that he heard Pale Snow offered, Wide-Eye Hansel,
which is nice.
And Call Ricci too. And he goes, well, he can't get out of it because, I'm married to his daughter. And Shivers is doing this thing where he either repeats what Calder says or he just does one-word answers. So he goes, he can hardly get out of it. Like he makes Calder makes a joke like they probably asked for a shield just so they don't get sprayed with my gore. And he just says, probably. It's just very deadpan. And then Calder asks him for advice. And Shivers, he says, well, if you get a chance, don't hesitate. He says, he looks down at the ring and he goes, mercy and cowardice are the same. Boo, boo, boo. And then, Calder goes, well, my father always used to say that nothing shows greater power than mercy, but Shivers goes, not in the circle. And it's time, so he cuts Calder's binds, and I guess it's time to lead him to the circle. Then we do switch perspectives to Beck because he's holding a shield with Wonderful, Jan, Scory, and all the great names in the north on Dow's side, right? Mm-hmm. And on the other side, he sees Call Ricci, and he said it would have been a sorry lot compared to Dow's side if there hadn't been the biggest bastard Beck I've ever seen towering over the rest of them. And then he asks, who the hell's that guy? And Flood says that stranger come knocking or stranger come fucking, and is the chief of all the lands east of the Krina. And he goes, Jesus. But now, okay, so they come. Shivers brings Calder, puts him in the circle, and goes to pick up a shield next to Wonderful, right? And Calder, so from Beck's perspective, Calder is nodding at every man, like they're all, like a bunch of old friends. He even nodded at Beck, and he's smirking and everything. And Beck nodded back because he goes, he knew what it was to face your death, and he reckoned it took some bones to smile at a time like that. And then it's immediately switch perspectives, and Calder, and we're back to him, and he's so scared that the faces around the circle are just dizzying smears.
I absolutely love that about Calder. He's just always smiling, just to piss people off.
Yeah, brilliant. Right. So, and he was like, I'm determined to meet the great leveler with some pride. So he just held on to a smirk at all costs, and he's just like, I don't even know who you all are, because he's like tearing up and stuff. And then he goes to call Ricci. He goes, you came. And Ricci could barely look at him in the eye. He goes, it's the least I could do. And he goes, it's the most you could do. Tell Seth, that he saw that, called her sorry. And he says, cheer up. This isn't a funeral yet. And then he sees Stranger, and he goes, you're holding a shield for me? And he goes, why? Why are you holding a shield for me?
There was the room.
There was room. He goes, ah. And then he looks at Palin Snow and he says, did you come for the room? He says, I came for you and for Scale and for your father. And Wide Eye Hansel says, and me as well. And he almost like started crying, Calder. And he grabs them both by the shoulders. Like, it means a lot, guys. It means a lot. And then there's noise in the crowd and Dow walks in, surrounded by his homies, his Carls. And then he looks, he's just, he looks at them and he goes, well, you made it. I was worried my dog might have eaten you in the night. He's referring to Shivers. Everyone laughed except Shivers. And then he starts like kind of like doing the whole like bravado lead up, right?
Yeah.
He's monologuing.
He's monologuing.
He is monologuing. You are right, George. And to his point, I mean specifically to Black Dow's point, I mean, he kind of deserves the right to monologue, but
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the guy is completely within his rights to kill Calder at this point, like in Northern culture, and he's got everybody on his side. So why wouldn't he?
Right, and I mean he's well within his rights in any culture. The Calder was conniving to have Black Dow stabbed in the back. I mean, yeah.
I think there is another angle at this as well, where maybe this victory at the Heroes isn't as much of a victory as they're making it out to be, or at least they did when they were celebrating. And now everybody's just kind of like, well,
what do we do now?
So he needs that extra boost of popularity, and maybe putting down this traitor will help that.
Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. And then he does say something to Calder where he says, he's sorry, but he had to send to Carleon for his wife, for Seth, because she stood hostage for him. So, Calder gets mad. He gets like, leave her alone. She doesn't have no part in this. And Dow says, you got no place to tell me what's what, you little shit.
Damn.
He's he's tired of Calder, and I think he's I agree with Dow. I'm sorry, I may be on my knees for Dow, but fucking he's right. He did give Calder plenty of chances.
And hell, even thematically for Calder, it makes sense because he's failed in the one thing that he should have been able to do, which is recognize that he was being played.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and we can get into that in the next couple episodes. Right, but Dow does the thing where he talks about what he wants to do to her, but then he goes, but he can afford to be generous and he'll let it pass out of respect to call Ricci, since he's the one man in the North who still does what he fucking says he will. And Ricci's just like, I'm grateful for that.
I love how he's like called out. He's like, yes, I am definitely a man of my word.
And Dow goes like, in spite of my reputation, I actually don't like hanging women. But if I get any softer, they'll have to call me White Dow. Ha 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 ha.
I like how it's the second time he's made that joke as well.
Yeah.
It is a good one though.
It's funny. Dow kind of does some shadow boxing really fast, and Calder's like, "Oh fuck!" And
I love that.
It's so stupid.
It's actually, I mean, it's not. He's all for show.
No,
Black Dow has to make it look like he's badass.
No, shadow boxing is a thing for fighters. It is a thing.
Yeah,
MMA fighters, boxers do it.
But it's so stupid, like in the context. Just such.
No, he's warming up. He's warming up.
He's trying to get in. He wants to get in the head of Calder, and he says, "Reckon I'll just have to kill you twice as much." And then something pokes Calder in the ribs, and it's Pale Snow handing him his sword. And I like how Calder goes, "Oh, okay. Do you have any advice?" And he's hoping that he says, "I'm going to read this verbatim." He goes, hoping the old warrior would narrow his eyes and spout some razor observations about how Dow led with the point too much, or dipped his shoulder too low, or was awfully vulnerable to a middle cut. All he did was puff out his cheeks. It's fucking Black Dow.
Pacey delivers that line so good. He's like, "It's fucking Black Dow." It's great. It's so good.
There's a couple of really, really good lines from Pacey here, and there's also the way that Calder says, "Right, okay, yeah."
Right.
Just like it just didn't seem like, yeah, okay. Oh my god, I'm gonna die. I love it.
And and Dow keeps, he keeps talking, he's monologuing here. At some point, Calder just interrupts him, right? Said, just says, "Shut your fucking hole and get on with it, you boring old cunt." It's just like, yikes. And then Dow Dow shrugs, and then everyone kind of just like the circle kind of like locks in, right? All the shields are locked in, and now it's time. And Dow steps forward, and we're not gonna get into too much detail about this because at the end of the day, it's a fight, and it's very one-sided.
Very true.
Dow plays with him at first, hits him with like the flat of the blade, knocking him down, tripping him, cracking him over the head. There's really nothing that Calder can do to Dow. There is absolutely like this is years and years and years of fighting and bloody experience from Dow against Calder, who admits
somebody who barely even remembers being taught in the first place.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I do like how helpless he is. He's just completely fucking, and obviously Dow's toying with him.
Yeah.
And even at one point, gets him, does that classic trick where they've got the sun in their eyes.
Yeah, that's right. He basically kept sidestepping and making Calder sidestep. So the next thing you know, Calder's just looking right at the sun. He goes, "Oh, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Fancy shit." Dow he's taking the time in between this ass whooping to continue to just talk down to him. He goes, "Yeah, your father died badly, like I remember, just smashed to a pulp. Hardly had a face at all once the Bloody Nine was done with him." And he keeps talking. At this point, Calder, he sprang up from when he was on his knees, not for a blowjob, and he was expecting.
There it is. I got word.
And he was trying to like time a jump or something, and he sprang, but Dow saw it coming like from a mile away, and he grabs Calder's sword hand, and he goes, "I'll make sure that your death is worse." and this is like, this is also the part where right before this, again, when Calder was on his knees, not for a blowjob, he was reaching for his sword. Dow had stepped and basically broke Calder's hand, right? And I think it was his left hand, or I'm not sure if it was a sword hand or his left hand, but whatever it was, his fingers were just useless. And so when Dow grabs him by the throat and says, I'll make sure your death is worse," Calder is uselessly pawing at Dow with his mangled hand. And
yeah, it's pretty fucking harrowing to read this, like, from somebody who actually likes Calder.
Yeah, no, here's the thing: we do like Calder, right? And you're like, Christ. I mean, whenever I read this, when I was reading this chapter for the first time, or when I reread it, in my head, I think of that song, "Why Can't We Be Friends?" I just want Dow to forgive Calder, or I want Calder to be like really self-honest, like he fucked up, and like let's just work it out, couples therapy. But no.
I think that, like, to a degree, like, a lot of characters in the series deserve a little mistreatment. Calder, I think, for what Black Dow was doing, playing with him, putting him in his place, I don't necessarily think that the Calder doesn't deserve it. So I don't really feel bad at all whenever he's getting this ass whooping. I don't want him to die, but the actual act of drawing it out, I understand why Dow does it. And you would have no need to not drag it out, other than just the classic, hey, don't drag things out. You never know what might happen. And so, other than that small thing, I think everything Dow doing is completely justified. Not saying that you guys don't agree to a certain point, but I don't really feel bad that he's getting beat up. I'm kind of like, yeah, if he does survive this, maybe he'll actually value a bit more of the violence than he acted like he did. Maybe he'll realize that there is a point to it. Maybe he'll feel like I've been through it now too, rather than just being like always, like, oh, I'm above it,
That's well put,
Yeah, very true, very true. And at some point, Dow, hurts him again with some strikes, hits him in the ribs and stuff. Tosses his sword to Shivers, and Shivers catches it. And Dow just focuses on. He just grabs Calder by the neck and just starts choking he lifts him up and is just squeezing the shit out of him. And Calder can feel like the bones in his neck click. He felt like his eyes were gonna pop. Everything was getting bright, and Dow is everything is coming to this point where I think Calder is he might explode. His head might explode from how hard Dow is squeezing. And he says, Dow says to him, he says, "You think this is the end? I'm just getting started, you fuh." This hurts. This hurts. There was a sharp crack, and blood sprayed up, dark streaks against the sky. Calder lurched back. He's gasping, and as his throat and his sword hand came free, and he nearly slipped as Dow fell against him and flopped face down into the filth. Blood gushed from his split skull, spattering Calder's ruined boots. Every voice was silenced. Every eye staring at the wound in the back of Black Dow's head, and Call Shivers stood there in the middle, right, of the circle, with the sword that had been the Bloody Nine's and had been Black Dow's, and he said, "I'm no dog."
I love this. This is one of my favorite of Joe's talks.
Oh, you love it, do you? You fucking
I
piece
do.
of shit.
I think it's a worthy sacrifice of Black Down that would happen, because we've had this.
Well, you're wrong, but okay.
The interactions whenever people call Shivers his Dow's dog, and all that's all the way throughout this book. And the one thing we know about Shivers, and he says it over and over, he's still got his pride.
He still got his pride. That's right. You're right. That's right. This had to come back sooner or later. But what the crazy thing was is like, up until that point, everybody else called Shivers Black Dow's dog. But Black Dow, as we know it, didn't say it until then. And it's like, anyway.
What a big mistake.
Yeah, big mistake. Big mistake. Calder's, he looks at Broad 10 ways, and they look at each other. And they're both, kind of like doing the math in their head. 10 ways was Black Dow's man, but Black Dow's dead. Everything, changed in a matter of seconds. And Calder remembered what Shivers had told him. You get a chance, don't hesitate. And Calder still had his sword in his hand, and so he just basically flung himself forward, and his sword came down as 10 Ways was reaching for his sword. And he tried to bring his shield up, but it got caught with the guy next to him that was holding shield, and Calder's blade just split 10 Ways' face, basically in half. And then Calder's last line in Eternal Monologue is, just goes to show a poor fighter can beat a great one easily, even with his left hand, as long as he's the one with the drawn sword. Then we briefly switch to Beck's perspective, and Beck is kind of like a very mini immediate flashback where Beck looks around as he felt Shivers move, and saw the blade flash over. So then when Dow hit the ground, Beck went for his sword, and then Wonderful catches his wrist. And she says no, and then Calder lurched, but it was towards 10 Ways, not towards Beck. So and Beck tries to shake Wonderful off, but Scory gets his hand is on his other arm, and they start both dragging him back. And Scory says in his ear, "The right thing's a different thing for every man."
And for every situation, I think, because how many people's situations changed when Dow got killed? Though? Like, how many people just immediately saw that and had that shift in their mind that just went, "Yeah, no, everything's different now."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's really cool to see how everybody reacts. I think this is like a hard thing to do inside of a series or in a story, is to see how what does Dow's position actually look like. It's been subtly set up, how everybody treats him. Nobody's really loyal to Dow, but no one knows anything different. He's kind of got the classic dictator thing going on. So as soon as he dies, there's an immediate power vacuum. And I love that, everybody has this reaction of, what the fuck do we do? Calder takes the initiative, Beck is willing to go in and fight because he's trying to do the quote unquote right thing, and I think it's done really, really well. It's hard. It's really hard to do with a moment like this.
And
but-
Wonderful being the veteran warrior that she is, it's just like, no, we've got to get the fuck out of here. This is wrong. Good instincts.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we switched perspectives back to Calder, and he's just standing there, and he's expecting chaos to just emerge at any moment, right? And he's looking at Ten Ways Men and Dow's other Carls, and he's just like, "Come on!" But they all didn't move, and then he feels a weight on his shoulder. It was so heavy that it almost made him buckle, and it was Stranger Come Knocking had put his hand on his shoulder, and he goes, "This was well done and fairly done too. For anything that wins is fair in war, and the greatest victory is the one that takes the fewest blows. Bethod was king of the Northmen, so should his son be. I, Stranger Come Knocking, chief of 100 tribes, stand with Black Calder." It was like, what? Black Calder.
It sounds a little prepared.
It
must
does
say.
sound a little prepared. You're right about that, and I have a lot of questions and stuff. But I like how Calder thought, maybe does he think that whoever's in charge has the word black before his name or whatever? It just stuck. And then Ricci comes, and he puts a hand on Calder's other shoulder and goes, "And I stand with my son, with Black Calder," just smiling and everything. And
He's
so
like, he's like so proud. He's like, my boy.
yeah, and and then Pale and Snow, White Eye Hansel, even then Ironhead says, and he stands with him. And Golden too. And now everybody, they're all saying that they stand with Black Calder. And then
that
Shivers.
absolute fucking shift is so hard to get your mind around, isn't it? Sometimes
It is a little hard.
It's jarring, yeah.
And then Shivers, he takes the chain off Dow's body, and and he gives it to Calder, and he says, "Looks like you win." And then Calder smirks, and he goes, "Doesn't it though?" And then we switch perspectives, and we're back with Beck, and yeah, so like the wonderful Scory, Jan, and Flood, they're dragging him back, and then they get to like a stone in the heroes, and then she sets a shield down, and she pulls something out of her coat, which is a purse. And she gives it to Jan, she gives it to Scory, she gives one to Flood, and she offers one to Beck. Apparently, it's like bulging and has plenty in it. So Wonderful says, "You get half a share," and he goes, and Beck refuses essentially. He goes, "No, I don't want it." And then they're all frowning at him, and he goes, we should have done the right thing." And
By the way, side
Go ahead.
note is Pacey's Scory's voice. He's like, his reaction to him is like,
"Oh, what?
He don't want it. He's like, "You don't want it." He's like, he's absolutely baffled.
Mm-hmm.
And I like seeing how after he says, we should have done the right thing. Jolly Yan gets like aggressive as fuck. Like I thought he was gonna straight up just fucking kill him right then and there. No one's gonna say anything. So he like walks up and he's like, "I thought I heard enough of that. Like we're done doing that shit. I spent my entire life in the black business with nothing to show for it." Which is interesting to see how with Wonderful's reaction and his reaction, we'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a second, but how quickly, as soon as Craw's gone, which we know that they must have always felt this way, at least Jolly Yan, he obviously was resentful towards Craw because he thought for some reason that the right thing is what kept him from getting money. And to a degree, I'm sure it was. But it's interesting that he just put that blame on him. But he also still respected Craw, so he was never going to like say anything to him.
I mean, we even saw that in the first few chapters when Craw doesn't let them loot the bodies.
Right.
Which is because it's not the right thing to do. Even though somebody else is just going to come along and do it anyway.
Right. Jolly, I think, I don't know if the guy obviously had a lot of respect and, cared about Craw. Maybe you could say he even loved him and everything, because he always depended on Craw to be the one to tell Jan's kids if he died or whatever. I think he's like, all right, listen, I didn't like that shit, the whole doing the right thing we didn't get as much money as we could have gotten or we should have gotten. but it was an honor to serve with him. But he's done. He's out. He's gone, and I don't want to hear shit about the right thing anymore, which is understandable.
Yeah.
And Wonderful stops Jan, right? And she talks to Beck, and she's being soft here. She goes like, "What kind of right ends up with more men dead than less?" And she talks about, do you know that how many friends she's lost in the last few days? And she goes, Dow was done one way or another. Dow was done. So she goes, so we should have fought for him. Why? He's nothing to me. No better than Calder or anybody else. So you're saying we should have died for that? And then, Beck, I guess he considers this, but then he goes, he doesn't know, but he doesn't want the money. And he says, whose is it even? And she just says, ours. And he goes, well, he still says that, this isn't right. And she goes, all right, well, straight edge, huh? Well, good luck with that. You'll need it. And, and then Beck notes that Flood looked guilty, but he wasn't giving anything back. And they're all just counting the money.
I want to talk about something which is interesting because this is common in like criminal organizations where if you don't take money, you're just out. Because you have to be in this thing called equal culpability.
Right.
Yeah.
So everyone is guilty of the same thing, and if somebody isn't, they feel judged because of their own guilt.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and then you can't trust. Right, it's also like a thing about trust,
Mm-hmm.
So then Beck says to himself, I guess he goes like, "What would have Craw have made of this?" And Wonderful just says, "Who cares? Craw's gone, and we got to make our own choices." And he goes, "You know what? Yeah," and he walks away, and he doesn't answer to Flood's call of like, "Where are you going?" He just starts walking away, and people, don't forget that the heroes were surrounded by people watching the duel, the fight in the circle, and there are people that are asking Beck like, "What happened? Who did Dow win?" And then Beck just says, "I don't know," and then he just keeps walking, and he's he knew one thing and only one thing, that this life wasn't for him. He goes, "The songs might be full of heroes, but the only ones here were stones."
Nice.
And
it's a
then,
cold line, dude. I love that line.
Yeah, and the end of that chapter, boys. How do you rate? I already know like what I'm rating it, but
yeah, it's got to be a 9, hasn't it?
yeah, it's a 9 for me. As much as it hurt to see Dow die,
it's
oh god, hurt.
just a perfect combination of Craw, Beck, Calder, and Dow's characters, and Chivers almost, for this book at least.
Yeah. Why did Dow have to call Shivers a dog in front of everybody?
I know. It's terrible. We'll get into that in a minute. But yeah,
we gotta talk about the fucking money and how quick Wonderful and Scory were to take Beck out the picture. Like, it's like oh, they knew something was happening beforehand.
I think they were trying to short him in the first place as well, weren't they? They only offered him a half, which is he fought in the same battle that they did.
Well,
yeah,
but
he
didn't do shit. I mean,
and
he
only fought.
Yeah, but it's not like Wonderful's there being a manager going, "Oh yeah, no, you're under quota. Sorry, you're only getting a half."
I mean, here's the thing though. She actually is, in my opinion, she couldn't have paid him anything, and he would have been fine. Like she was trying to help him out. Like, hey, here's your portion for being a part of the battle. You joined our crew halfway fucking through. And so you're getting a half portion because we all know each other. And so half portion is more than fair. I think she's being fair with that. My thought is, you mentioned the feeling that like it almost seemed like it was planned. Now, my thought is like between these two chapters in particular have this vibe that everybody kind of had the feeling something was going to happen. Everybody except for the readers, I think that comes from the fact that...
How do you figure that?
Well, one, Blacktail obviously knew that Crawl was going to leave.
Right.
Everybody else reacts very quickly. I think to your point, Jeff, is I think they react quickly because they are like scared, and so they had the thought in their mind: if something goes wrong, if Calder does get a secret hidden, here's what we're gonna do. Wonderful is absolutely the prepared kind of person to be like, all right, here's my plan, like in our mind. To make sure in case something goes to shit. She has no loyalty to Black Dow. She only did it because it would help her position better.
And that would make the conversation between Dao and Ishri at the beginning of the chapter make a lot more sense as well. You know, when she says, if you step into the circle, I can't protect you. That would make more sense if they were anticipating a sneak attack.
Yes, I don't think they knew. I think that the thought is that this could go to shit because no one really likes Dao, and everybody has to be ready for it. And in addition to that, I think that the vibe too is like Black Dao was boasting he's just doing his normal thing. I don't think he like expected it or something, but he's pretty tired too. That's why he's so empathetic to Crawl. I think that in a way, like old Dao would have never hesitated because he's getting older and he's tired and he has no friends. He figured this is all I have now. I'm gonna boast to take my time, and that's what got him killed. And I think that people kind of saw that in a way, like Dao to a certain degree, things are going to change after this battle. So everyone was holding their breath and then changed in the battle, and so everybody reacted accordingly. So it's like I said in the last chapter, it's very well done how he handles everybody's reactions to things.
Exactly, and it's very thematic as well, isn't it? You know, hubris is a big factor in this book. So having Dao deliver the final big hubris is it's great.
Yeah. Did you give your score, Harrison?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 9 because really well. It is like everything I said already. It's done really, really well. I can totally see this moment, like this almost like dark cloud over Shivers, and you can barely see his one eye glinting as he's looking down at like only his eyes are looking down on Dao's body, and he's like, "I'm no dog." Like I love that visual. I love how too, in a way, this I don't want to spoil something, but it foreshadows something. He's like, "Oh, all my seeds of doubt, they worked. My seeds of doubt." But I really don't think it had anything to do with Calder. I think it was all Shiver. Shiver does not give a shit about Calder. I think what happened is he had enough, like everybody else in this fucking book, and he just took care of business whenever he saw an opportunity to do so, and whenever he couldn't take any more. But I think it's funny that Calder's like, "Oh my god, all my seeds of doubt and stuff, they worked," but it didn't work. It didn't work.
I mean, I don't know. I think maybe they did work to a degree. You know, Calder would, for the time being, he kept picking at his pride. Remember?
He does have some goodwill with Ironhead and Golden because he knows how to play them off each other as well as everybody,
Right.
anybody else would.
Right. I know, like, this is like because of Shiver's decision to do that. I have, obviously, I don't know if we talk about it now or maybe another episode, like maybe at the conclusion of the book, but just there's a set up feeling here. It's like just feels set up in a way.
I feel like Calder already has an idea at this point of who really set up the job to kill him.
I doubt that. We'll talk about that next episode.
I'm talking about the Dao thing, but I know what you mean too. Yep. But we'll get to that. But yeah, I mean, this chapter, it has it all. It has intrigue as to like what happened. We have tension, the build up to the fight. We had Beck's third person perspective, right? Instead of like we have one of the participants and then we have Beck, right? It was like one of people holding the shield.
And we see that massive change in like just public feeling, like all in one go. Somebody gets killed, and like you say, Harrison, maybe that was planned beforehand, and everybody kind of had a contingency, or not, but everybody just lines up immediately, like, "Yep, I'm with this guy."
Well, there is a sense of because it's such a chaotic event, right? Shiver's killing Dao, and so now there's a power vacuum, right? And maybe a different war chief would have tried to seize power or whatever, but Dao was fighting Calder, right?
Yeah.
And then as soon as Stranger Come Knocking says that he backs Calder, that right there is it legitimizes Calder. In the idea.
Yes.
But there's already a sense of legitimacy because he's Bethod's son. So, but some people are like, who gives a fuck about the son? But then there are people that know that Calder's smart.
Exactly,
Go
and
ahead.
it makes sense that it's Stranger Come Knocking as well, because Stranger Come Knocking, being the chief of all East of the Kringer, probably has bigger or more power than any of the individual chiefs.
Oh,
yes,
right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And everybody knows that he loved Bethod, and his entire group, like you said, his entire group is right there and then. And he's also one intimidating motherfucker, which does matter in the north. So
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
he's a big boy.
Do any of the little men want to wrestle?
Yeah, so it's a fantastic chapter. I wish it would have gone a different way. I wish Dad would have just rode off into the sunset, retired, and made pots for the rest of his life. But
Like his hands used to be so soft,
Which brings
I
us
just
on
wanted,
to our next next section.
I just wanted my Dowie to be happy. That's all. Alrighty, but that's the end of that chapter read through. We appreciate your listening along, and we'll move on to our character spot, which is who else could it be? Boys, who are we gonna spotlight?
It's
I
Wearing a
wonder.
Fly.
Well done. Well said.
I would have imploded. I would have imploded. I would have legitimately punched
No,
the screen.
it's blacked out. It's blacked out. We got to talk about
Of
Blacked
course. Yeah, I mean, our boy Black Dow.
I mean, I think Blacked Out was probably one of my favorite characters all the way throughout the first trilogy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's just so on the point and brutal, but you can tell that there's something under there, and then we get that confirmed here.
Yeah, he's funny, right? He's
funny.
ornery all the time.
He's badass.
Badass, has a soft spot for Forley.
He does.
know. Oh God, he's the only one that I remember that chapter. I think from Dogman's perspective, it was like as they watched Forley go, Black Dow kind of gave them all like a jump scare when he says out of nowhere, good luck, Forley. Like luck, Forley. And I was, oh shit, and they didn't expect that,
And that's such an interesting characteristic, Chris. I feel like a lot of the Northmen, they respect power a little bit too much, and it's the only thing that matters.
Mm-hmm.
Hence why we can see there's resistance to Calder in the beginning of this book as well. Somebody who isn't particularly good at fighting, but might be able to figure things out in a way that you might not have thought about.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe Calder recognized that back then. And even though Calder killed Forley, maybe Dow sees some of Forley in Calder.
With what way? I need elaboration. I'm trying to think about that, and I'm not.
Because he's the weakest. Calder isn't the weakest now.
Oh, are you saying? Do you think maybe that Dow recognizes that maybe
it's his weakness, which we got early in this book when Calder recounts his killing of, and he has the dream about killing Forley, and all he has is how he did it because he wanted to make himself feel stronger.
Right, because he can see himself in Forley.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that's part of that probably also that probably was like an influencing factor in his decision to have Forley killed, and maybe Dow recognizes that. Yeah, okay.
That's a good point, George. I did not think about it that way.
Yeah, see, Dow's much smarter than people give him credit for. All right.
From the beginning, I always thought that Dow, I found him. Obviously, we've all in our different ways. We all had our misconceptions about what kind of story this would be when we first started reading because of the way Joe purposely wrote it. And so I thought, oh, here's the antagonist.
Yeah,
and
he's the villain.
Yeah, he's the villain. He's gonna betray him, obviously. Then he betrayed him. Like, oh yeah, here we go. I knew there was some nuance there, obviously, but I wasn't sure to what degree. And then he says the crucial line, which is in the last argument of Kings, which is, basically he said, I don't mean the verbatim. I have to do this because I can't let you be king of the North.
Right.
Because I realized, oh shit, he is doing this because he felt it is his duty, not because he wants power. That completely changes his dynamic of the whole story.
You completely agree with him as well. Even the first time when I read when I read that the last argument of Kings for the first time, I got to the end and I was just so tired of how Logan does what he does.
Killing. Yeah.
I
Look,
was like,
you
yeah,
disagree
this
with me?
This is
Headbutt,
actually a
headbutt.
good thing. As much as I hate, and Calder and Scale is depicted as being absolute assholes as well. And got
Right.
Black Cow, Calder and Scale, and Splitfoot, Rip. Um,
Rip.
you feel like these guys should be the bad guys, but you don't feel that way. And
No,
that's just
no.
it's just a testament to Joe's writing that
It was a conflicting experience reading Last Argument of Kings, that chapter, for the first time,
yeah.
right? Because Logan's your protagonist, and you want him to be okay because you want your protagonist to be okay for the most part. But he's done some really fucked up shit at that point. And then now his reasonings are all laid clear. He goes, fuck you. Fuck you. You've killed more people than fucking death itself. You being the king of the North is about at least from Dow's perspective, it would be the most terrible thing, a cataclysmic event, right? And so you do empathize with that. And what I was gonna say is, like, and you see the progression of Dow's character, right? From the blade itself, ornery, angry guy, always bitching and moaning, but had a soft spot for Forley. And before they're hanged, you see him, he's bickering back and forth with Toll to the point where it's kind of like, comedic relief duo kind of thing. But he's comedic relief. Even, like, remember when he calls West furious, and he goes, "I'm beginning to like you, boy."
Yeah.
And then
I do like that though, the fact that Joe can make characters that are comedic relief at some points, and then later become more serious characters.
More.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then even like when Three Trees dies at the end, Dow's obviously one of Toll. It's him or Toll. No, it's actually gonna be Dogman's chief, and there's nothing you can say about it. We already decided. Too bad. Shut up. You're chief. You're better than both of us. And
Yep.
so, and then you see, and then Last Argument of Kings, he's in his groove, he's in his element, he's loving the new dozen, not the new dozen, but, like, Dogman's in charge of the dozen, and Dogman does his best to try to make sure people don't die. At least not he doesn't try to put the dozen at risk as much. We can't forget waste of a fucking bell by the dead.
Waste of a fucking bell by the fucking head.
He was around for the time where Grimm was starting to talk more and more. Remember? And then he loses Toll,
Yeah.
and that was, and then
And
he
he
would have one of the best.
immediately starts giving Logan the eye over the fire. Like, I fucking know you did it, you little bastard.
But he does provide one of the best eulogies in the series, I think, over Toll's his death, and then we don't see anything about him in Best of Cole, but we hear about him from Shivers talking about how he's the protector of the North, yada yada, and then we get this arc here in the Heroes, and as much as it breaks my heart that he died, it does make sense for his character. He either died. He can't just retire, because you don't just retire from being protector of the North. Your name is too much that people will still try to kill you.
Let's
Right?
face
They
it,
can't
Jeff.
take-
You wouldn't like this character as much as if he didn't die.
I don't know about that. I loved Dow from the first trilogy. Loved him. I'm dead ass. Loved him from the first trilogy.
Good stuff.
Dumb.
It's good stuff. Black Dow, we barely knew you.
We barely knew
Actually, we knew you
Actually,
very
we knew
well.
you quite well. Yes.
And I don't give a shit what surveys, polls, census forms say. Besides Baez, Dow is the best non-POV character in the series, bar none. And I will fight all you goofball heretics who think otherwise.
We can
Heretics.
arrange that. If anybody wants to fight Jeff over this, we'll be in
he's
Oklahoma.
like,
in 4 weeks.
we'll be Oklahoma. Let's do it, baby. I'm ready. Fuck it.
So,
All right. That's our show, everyone. We want to thank you all for listening and supporting this podcast. As you know, this is a passion project for the three of us, and your support means so much.
join us next week as we cover the currents of history, terms, and family.
And make sure you follow us on all of our social media. We have a website, and you can email us at circleoftheworldpodcast@gmail.com.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And please make sure to rate and review us. Thank you all again for listening. The Clay used to make my hands so soft.